20th meeting of the Lane County Budget Committee to order. And the first item that we have on the agenda this evening is committee business. And we have two sets of minutes that came to us on Monday. Does anybody have any comments or revisions for the May 11th minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 11th.
I'll second
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Weber. Thank you for the second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Taking a look at the May 13th minutes, does anybody have any comments or corrections for those minutes? Seeing none, a motion, please.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for the May 13th meeting as submitted. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Very good. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any other, before we get started with the public comment section, does anybody have any other quick items under committee business? Okay, seeing none, we're ready to move into public comment. Staff, please take it away.
There is one register for public comment, but I do not see them on the meeting. So at this point, there is no public comment.
Okay. Is there any requirement to keep this open for a period of time?
Hi, Chair Blodman. This is Christine. So you just have to be here at the time that you say it will start. So you do have 3 minutes until the start time on the agenda.
Okay. Please note that Commissioner Farr is online. Good to see you, Pat.
Good to be seen.
Please note that you all missed me singing the theme song to the Patty Duke song show when Heather and I were both logged in under my name because of my technical difficulties. So you can be sad about that.
The Patty Duke show.
It looked like we were identical cousins. Anyway, never mind.
I could probably sing that. That's how pathetic my memory is.
I'll sing it for you sometime, Joe.
If you would note that we received an updated, a fresh email with the link to the next portion of this meeting.
Thank you.
So after we get done with this meeting, we're going to take just a quick break and then disconnect from this meeting and join the other meeting.
Are we waiting out our 2 minutes?
We're waiting. We're waiting till the time on the agenda, which is noted as 5:40, to see if anybody joins for public comment. So in the good faith spirit, we'll wait for this countdown timer to complete. And if it does, then we'll, and nobody joins in for public comment, we'll move forward. So Metro TV, do you have what you need for the next meeting to to join into the next meeting? Thank you. Okay, seeing that nobody has joined, we will disconnect from this session and take a very short recess. And if you would, please come back at 5:48. I don't know that there's need for any longer break than that, just long enough to disconnect, get into your email, find the new link, and join back in. And we'll start at 5:48. Thank you all. going to go into is the budget process recap. And Mr. Morkowski, am I correct in that you're helping us out here?
Yes, Chair, and I think this is just an open discussion. I don't have, this has been a great process so far. We've shared a lot of information. I think the feedback from committee members last week was really helpful, and we anxiously await the discussion in the fall to further refine the focus of our discussions in future budget processes. So we appreciate that feedback and look forward to more adjustments going forward. I think this year's budget process has been really smooth. It has not been certainly easy, and a lot of things in flux and uncertainties as we move through the COVID pandemic and holiday farm fire recovery and all the challenges that has brought to our organization. We continue to be pleased that our budget is mostly structurally balanced, and we continue to make targeted investments in really critical areas in public safety and behavioral health in particular, as well as this coming year in equity and data analytics for new initiatives in those areas. And then I'll just remind the committee that as we did on the opening night and throughout, that it's a stretched budget. It's we're stable but stressed, as we've said. And so just continuing to have an eye towards long-term financial stability and making sure that the things that we commit to in the short term, we have the ability to responsibly pay for in the long term. So that, I guess those are my general comments. I'll say I want to just thank our staff, Christine Moody, Jill Allen, Joe Celesta, and Tanya Ellis in the budget office for their incredible work. There's just so much behind the scenes that goes on to prepare the document and the process for the committee. I want to thank all of our department staff that also do a lot of work in both preparing the materials that become the proposed budget, as well as preparing the presentations that you all received over the last couple of weeks. So thank you to all of our staff who've done the behind the scenes work and participated in those conversations. And then thank you to the 10 of you, particularly our 5 appointed members of the committee who volunteer your time with us and provide your perspective and knowledge and expertise to help aid this process and our management of the limited financial resources that we have here at the county. So I'm going to stop there and certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Excellent. So any questions for Mr. Morkowski or discussion points on the recap? Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking for an agenda, so if this isn't the appropriate time, I'm happy to do it later. But and I had talked to our administrator about this a little bit before, but I'm really excited and really pleased that even with such a stressed budget and even with all the county and our constituents have experienced, that we are looking at adding positions, particularly the ones that we're adding, and moving our commitment to equity forward with this investment. And I would just really appreciate hearing a little bit more about the data and analytics positions. We heard mostly from tech services because that's where they'll be housed. But I would like to hear a little bit from our administrator about how he sees those positions supporting or advancing our equity work. Sometimes using historical data and assumptions can, risks promoting the furtherance of inequality and biases. So data can be a tricky thing, and I would just love to hear a little bit more about the vision for the function of those positions and how they'll differ from or enhance the data that's already being collected at the department level.
Okay, yes, Chair and Commissioner Trigger, thank you for that question. We've talked a little bit about the role. I'll just sort of recap our data analytics. We're creating a manager position and an analyst position. The structure, as we've talked about, is going to be similar to how we've set up the emergency management the Office of Emergency Management for Lane County, which was newly created, I believe, 2 years ago. And we went and hired Patience Winningham as our manager in that role. We set it up as an independent office that directly reports to the Director of Public Works, because we wanted it to have that department level administrative support that comes with a large department. But it has the emergency manager has a dotted line reporting relationship to the county administrator. So I continue to meet with patients on a regular basis on strategic matters related to emergency management, while the day-to-day functions and operations are managed within the Public Works Department. So I offer that as an example of this structure of data analytics is an independent office that is directly connected to technology services and will report to the Director of Technology Services, but will have a dotted line relationship to the administrator. The new equity manager position that we're creating will have a direct line to the administrator and will report directly to the county administrator. So I just offer those sort of organizational structures, that these are both roles that are going to have organization-wide portfolios. As it relates to data and analytics, I guess I won't go, because your question is specifically about equity, and so I'm not going to talk more broadly about the data analytics role for the organization. I'll just focus specifically. I think that the answer to your question, Commissioner, I can't give 100% answer to that, because I think what's going to be really critical is for us the next steps are for us to fill that equity, to recruit. We'll do open national recruitments, both for the equity manager position and the data analytics manager positions, recruit and fill those positions, and then begin to have conversation. I think the conversations that I envision related to equity are, what data do we currently collect that's relevant for us, not only to understand challenges and issues, but that help us identify how to solve some of the problems that we see in that area of work. So it's first going to be identifying, what do we collect? What data do we collect? What don't we collect, and how readily available, how critical is that data, and how readily available can we go about collect, does another entity collect it? I know some of these questions have been raised related to the district attorney's office and other public safety related functions. So there needs to be a significant conversation with those two thought leaders in data analytics and equity around really what are our priorities in equity, and what data do we collect and what don't we, and should we, and then developing appropriate systems for collecting the data that we don't currently have. So it's ultimately going to be first having those conversations, and then identifying what data is going to be critical to help us understand the challenges that we face and the solutions necessary to solve those challenges in our focus on equity, access, and inclusion. So hopefully that gives you, I think our goal is to identify areas where there are missed opportunities to share data and analytics. We want to listen both to our employees as well as to members of the public. We have our Equity and Access Advisory Board, which is a volunteer community-led effort to advise us on matters of equity. And so I think we would certainly seek feedback and guidance from that body on what information would be useful in that effort. So I envision this as a collaborative process to really first seek feedback and then develop the necessary processes for collecting all the relevant information to be able to report on it.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I'm really pleased to hear these new positions will sort of come on board in an integrated way. It's really important. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Lasley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to point out to the committee that this week, Commissioner Buck testified before the United States Senate Finance Committee on behalf of the National Association of Counties on funding and financing options to bolster American infrastructure. And I had the opportunity to watch that testimony, and it was impressive and represented the budgetary needs and priorities of counties across the nation. And I think when we look at our budget being stressed, I feel really excited that we were so well represented by her on the national level, advocating for the United States Senate to find more money to support county infrastructure financing.
Other comments regarding budget process? Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Just a little bit of recap, and I'll probably ask Ms. Moody to step in here as well. But what we've got in front of us is we have 4 proposals that came from the committee members. And the first step that we'll go through with those 4 is we'll take a quick poll on them each to determine if there are 3 people that are in favor of a discussion on the topic. And then we'll do that, and we'll go through that entire list and do that process. And then for those that receive 3 or more votes, we'll open it up first to the person who proposed it, and then to others for discussion on those particular items. Any other questions or recommendations for the process on these?
Sorry, Chair, I heard you just say 3, but the page we're looking at says 4 votes.
Oh, you are correct. Thank you, Mr. Hazen. I misspoke right there. It is 4. Any questions about that? Okay, let's just start down through the list. The first one there, if we can, it's just, you can go ahead and read the title of it yourself. It is submitted by Commissioner Bosevich.
Chair Vlobin, if I recall correctly, this proposal is quite similar to a proposal that was made by Commissioner Bosevich at last year's Budget Committee meeting. Is that correct, or is my memory in error?
It lasts 2 years, actually.
Last 2 years. Okay. Okay. Would it, and do I recall correctly, Chair, that when these proposals were reviewed last year, there was an opportunity for the proposer, and I'm thinking of the new members of the Budget Committee, to very briefly explain the background to the proposal before a vote was taken? Or am I out of order?
I think that is a, I think that's a good question to have at this point in time. I think that may have been part of the process that we did in the past, and I think that would be a good thing to do at this time. So Commissioner Bosevich, will you please just give us a brief description of your proposal?
Sure. So the Association of Oregon California Counties is a group of 18 counties that have these unique lands that are owned by the federal government, managed by the Bureau of Land Management, set aside in a congressional act specifically for the production of timber to benefit the counties. It's a set of lands that only occurs in Oregon. We pulled our dues away from that a couple of years back. I'm asking to have us rejoin that association as we look at the cost of lumber and housing right now and the need for additional lumber to be on the market. This group advocates for the counties to get additional harvest from these federal lands. And as we look at the devastating wildfires we had and the amount of timber that was lost, I think it's important for us to be in part of this conversation. And I'm just asking to rejoin the association as a dues paying member.
So if I could, we'll start with a show of hands to see that if we have 4. And Commissioner Bosevich, I'm going to assume your hand is raised since it's your proposal. So all others, please hand in front of the camera. I see a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 5 for discussion. So that one will move forward for discussion. And the next proposal is for Commissioner Farr. Would you please go ahead and give us a brief description of that?
Thank you. The City of Eugene provides funding for neighborhood association newsletters. There are two neighborhoods that are about 50% inside the City of Eugene and 50% inside the urban growth boundary, but outside the City of Eugene. The city allows funding only for the households that are inside the City of Eugene, but requires that the newsletters and other communication be sent to the entire neighborhood association, leaving a gap in funding significantly for both the Santa Clara and the River Road neighborhood groups. They have covered that in the past with funding from other sources, but in order to move forward with the essential communication, particularly right now as we're going through the River Road Santa Clara refinement plan, they need additional money to ascertain that the newsletters are newsletters and other communication can go out. And I've included how the funding will be derived.
Excellent. So first, Commissioner Bozievich, I'm going to ask for your vote verbally before I ask for the rest to raise their hand. And is your hand raised on this or not?
Yeah, I'll be a raised hand to discuss this.
Excellent. Others, please raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I guess that's everybody. So that one will go forward as well. And the third one we have up here is a proposal from Mr. Hazen. Mr. Hazen, will you give us a brief description of your proposal?
So, Chair, for this proposal, subject to the views of other committee members, I would be happy to withdraw this proposal based on the comments from the administrator that we just heard. It sounds like this is already in process, and I don't see a need to discuss this proposal. Oh, you're on mute, Chair.
I clicked on the wrong spot on the screen and the mute didn't come back off.
Okay.
So is there anybody opposed to Mr. Hazen's proposal being withdrawn? Okay, seeing none, we will remove that one. And will you pause or just hold on, give me a minute here. I'm having some network issues. Let me make sure that I can see the screen. Okay. Mr. Hazen, the second proposal you had, which was number 4 on the original list.
Yep. So for this proposal, my understanding, and I'm happy to get further clarification from budget staff, relates to the budget and brief document, which I understand is normally in the county budget. It's an important communication tool. My understanding from the reaction of various commissioners is that it has been, in its previous versions, has been a valuable way for commissioners to connect with their constituents. And so this proposal is just to confirm that it will be in the next budget. And again, if it already is in the budget, then this is just a sort of refinement, perhaps, of the budget proposal, and a request that it highlight the cost effectiveness of county investments in a way that I would defer to county staff to obviously there's a lot that could be highlighted, and it is a budget in brief. The administrator did highlight a few key metrics in one of your remarks, Administrator Mokrzycki. So, it may be as simple as including some of those key metrics that you've already highlighted for us. There may be other items that you want to include in the budget and brief document. Hopefully that would be the result of a follow-up discussion with the commissioners. So that's my proposal.
Okay, so we're going to take a poll. Commissioner Bozievich, is your hand up or down?
It's down for now.
Okay, others raise your hand if you're in favor of moving this forward. Okay, I see one hand total. So we will not move that one forward. Okay. Next, I think that we'll move back to the beginning of the list. And Commissioner Bozievich, I'm going to offer you the first opportunity to speak with regard to this proposal.
Thank you. So in the past, we've had this discussion before, and there's been concerns about the open meetings law and issues there about a county association that's A, not completely subject to it, and B, also deals with a lot of legal issues where they don't want to invite, just like we don't invite the folks that are suing us into our executive sessions. They don't necessarily invite some of the organizations that are on the other side of the legal table to the association meetings. But it is the only organization that's advocating on behalf of counties, the 18 counties, about these very specific lands to increased harvest or get timber replacement dollars into the counties. And as we look at our budgets, and we're all aware of the need for additional resources for everything from mental health to equity issues, we also understand that timber supply affects the cost of lumber as a commodity in this country. And anyone that's been to Home Depot or Jerry's recently understands how expensive a sheet of plywood's gotten recently. So for me, this is about rejoining an organization that's advocating for that harvest in a responsible way. They're not asking for us to go back to the 70s and 60s. And it will, at the same time of increasing the availability of lumber in the market, it will also increase resources for counties in their general funds in the most discretionary ability to spend, because the O&C land funds come into general fund, where U.S. Forest Service comes into the road fund, where it's highly restricted. So that's why I think it's important that we start paying our dues again and participating in this organization in a meaningful way, and advocating for these woods to be utilized in a responsible manner, help prevent catastrophic wildfire, while at the same time as sequestering carbon in the lumber that's harvested.
Excellent. Anybody else for discussion?
Do you need a motion to get it on the floor in a second to have discussion, or do you want to just discuss it without a motion?
We took the straw poll. Let's actually move forward with other comments at this point in time. Mr. Pryor, please.
Yeah, I want to move this forward just so that I can understand it more fully. It sounds like, and I'm somewhat familiar with the O&C Association from other forums. The impression I had is that it's not an association really in the traditional sense. It's more of a lobbying kind of group. They spend a lot of their time and a lot of their effort really lobbying for the increased timber harvest, which then has a benefit to the counties in terms of increased revenue. Am I getting that correct? Its real primary function is to lobby for increase in timber so that we can increase revenues for counties. Is there something else they do other than basically lobbying?
That's one of their main functions. A secondary function has been to kind of keep the federal government honest. During sequestration, the timber replacement dollars for the O&C lands was sequestered illegally, and it was the O&C association's attorneys that realized that and got that sequestration money back to the counties that was illegally sequestered. And in fact, it impacted the U.S. Forest Service monies that have been illegally sequestered also, because the timber replacement dollars weren't subject to sequester. So having an association that has specialists and attorneys highly involved in this federal bureaucracy and understanding it brought us in enough money just in that fixing the sequestering for a couple of years to pay our dues for several years, more than pay our dues. So yes, primary functions lobbying, But in addition to that, it's keeping an eye on how payments come out, how the money is divided amongst the counties in accordance with the original act, making sure things like sequestering don't happen. So yeah, it's sort of our oversight people, but primarily about lobbying to try and follow the actual intent of the original ONC Congressional Act.
Apart from the revenue that came in from sequestering, and you don't know how much money that was, you said several times the dues, was it like millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars? You have a sense of how much it was?
It was millions across the 18 counties.
Do you know how much Lane County got of that?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. Christine might remember it, but it was hundreds of thousands, I think, was the difference in the sequester.
Okay. And apart from that, have they also generated any additional revenue beyond the sequestered money? Have they also brought home the bacon, so to speak, in other ways?
Well, to get the ONC lands included in the Secure Rural Schools Act in the first place was part of their lobbying. So, and to continue to have it part of the Secure Rural Schools and Act, and the payments that have replaced that has been part of their lobbying. So, without their advocacy, that would have only impacted other forest lands and not these specific ones that are unique to Oregon. And that those replacement dollars since the spotted owl replacement have been millions and millions of dollars for southwestern Oregon, where these lands exist, and millions for Lane County. If we weren't included in that, our harvest dollars coming into the general fund from these lands, I believe is projected to be about $2 million. And I think the actual timber replacement funds are more than $4 million for just this budget year. So their advocacy around including the ONC lands and SRS has been invaluable to us.
Last question. Are there other organizations that do this kind of advocacy, or is this the only group that really does this kind of lobbying?
This is the only group that does it specifically in reference to the Oregon and California lands. You could say that the Association of Oregon Counties might do some of it, but they're divided between rangeland advocacy in Eastern Oregon and U.S. Forest advocacy. Their natural resources subcommittee, is divided up and does not specifically represent these unique lands that were set aside by an act of Congress.
Thank you.
Other discussion about this proposal? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. This has been a rather contentious item in previous years, at least as long as I have been on the board. There is a large dynamic surrounding this particular item between timber folks and environmentalists. And the one thing that I've always come back to when we discuss this particular issue is transparency. The biggest problem for me with this organization is that it isn't transparent. The public is not invited to budget or to meetings. I don't even know when the meetings are. You can't find them on their website. When people ask us what we are doing with our taxpayer dollars, their dollars, it's important to me that if we're going to utilize resources on their behalf, that it be in a way and in a manner in which those associations that we are responsible for funding are also transparent. I have not seen any change in that over the years that I've been a commissioner. And that is my main issue with this particular organization. In addition to that, I do know that our legislators and our folks in Congress advocate for this on a daily basis. I just spoke about it when I did the public hearing in front of the United States Congress on Tuesday morning. So this is not something that other folks aren't advocating for. And for that reason, I'm not in favor of this proposal.
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Chair Bloodman. Commissioner Bozovich, a question off the top of my head. There are 18 ONC counties in Oregon. How many counties are actively participants in the in ONC in the organization? Do you happen to know right off the top?
I believe it's 15 of the 18 counties are actively paying dues right now.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not positive about that.
Thanks.
Other questions? Commissioner Traeger?
Thank you, Chair. In partial answer to Commissioner Farr, it's my recollection that the Lane County Board of Commissioners, not the Budget Committee, the Lane County Board of Commissioners voted to withdraw membership from the association, and that was after both Multnomah and Benton counties had done the same. And I am opposed for any number of reasons, but not the least of which on a process side of having this committee undo an action that was taken by the full board through a process of getting the item on the agenda where the public could see that it was on the agenda and could weigh in and make their opinions known about how we spend their dollars. So I'm not in favor of adding this to this budget.
Commissioner Bernie?
When I was first elected commissioner, I'm not proud of this. I had never heard of the ONC. No one had come to me to talk about it during a very long campaign. No one came to talk to me about the issue in the 6 or 7 months between election and beginning the job. And so I was very open. I toured innumerable facilities, which was great. I made statements to the effect that everyone was professional and considerate, and I really enjoyed the people that did it. In fact, they were my people in the sense that I come from ag business 30 years ago. And I invited, after that, and I voted to have this move to the Board of Commissioners because I felt that the Board of Commissioners ought to be publicly accountable, especially for what felt at the time like a lightning rod issue to me. And I didn't understand why. I do now, but I didn't understand why, because the timber industry represents a smaller and smaller part of an ever diverse economic base for Lane County. And I invited, after that vote, I invited people to keep talking to me. I wanted to learn. And my problem now is not once in 2 years since that occurred has anyone come to persuade, to educate, to lobby, with the exception of Commissioner Bozovich, who's been wonderful in that regard with me. But I feel like this keeps popping up, and I've not seen any industry whose business activities seem to so intersect with a desire for public policy and public support. And I confess I really didn't get it when I was told. Whether this is correct or not, I don't know. But when I was told that the industry as a whole was not going to support bond election for needed public services until and unless this body rejoined the ONC. So I have no problem moving it forward or not. I do have a problem approving it when the Board of Commissioners comes to approve it. And it's for that reason. No one's been talking to me. No one for 2 years. And I'm really disappointed that that's the case.
Commissioner Bozovich, you've noted that your hand's up.
Thank you. First, I guess I want to first note that I forgot one thing that this organization does. It also files litigation on behalf of the 18 counties to try and make sure the federal government is following the original congressional act. And that's one of the reasons it got controversial was the federal government was in the expansion of a monument taking some of these lands without compensating the counties for them and replacing them. Previous actions where the federal government's taken the lands from the ONC counties, they have replaced them with like lands, and that litigation to try and get like land replacement became controversial because it was presented as being anti-monument, which it was not. I want to note that Lane County is members and pays dues to a lot of professional and other organizations that do lobbying, that do litigation, and that also play oversight roles that do not hold public meetings. And in particular, in some very controversial and public areas, including criminal justice, mental health, and other, and even, some of our folks that are professionals serving the homeless. You look at the Oregon Sheriff's Association, you can't find where their meetings are being held and come in as the public to attend those. You look at the DA's Association, you look at our public health officials associations, multiple places we pay dues. We pay dues to a county executives association. I don't know all the acronyms for all those associations. They're not necessarily public bodies, and they do get involved in lobbying. In fact, I think that, this particular legislative session, there's been some places where some of the associations have gotten crossways with each other. We're paying dues into associations that actually are on opposite sides of legislation. So I, just want to make that clear that if the only reason we're not participating in this is because of it's not public and doesn't have open meetings where the public's invited, there's many more associations we should be going through in our budgets and removing our dues from. So I just want to make that clear. I, just wanted to point that out. I also understand that these budget committee proposals were publicly placed on the agenda and were out there for the public to see prior to this meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true, Ms. Moody?
Commissioner, can you repeat the last part of your question? I'm sorry.
Were the 4 budget proposals that were put together for Tuesday, were they put on our website or in our budget committee information for the public to see?
Yes, we did put them on our website, so under the budget committee materials.
Okay, so it's not something that was not, couldn't have been known by the public. But I just want to say this particular proposal is to try and fix something I think that we did incorrectly, tried to fix it the last couple of years. It took the board, the budget committee wouldn't take the action to pull us out. The board ended up doing it a couple of years ago. And that's, I'm just trying to use the budget process to put the dues back in the budget because that seems like where it ought to happen. But, when the budget does come before the board, I'll make if it doesn't pass here today, I'll make the same proposal when it comes before the board.
Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. In response to the point about there being other association dues that we paid for, those are within departmental budgets. It's my understanding this sheet that was in our budget binder is the sum total of countywide fees, dues, association costs, one of which is our Metro Cablevision, Lane Air Protection, the Association of Counties, And other than those, Lane Council of Governments. So there's really single-digit numbers of countywide intergovernmental dues and association costs. I know Commissioner Bozovich in the past has mentioned when this came up that if we were going to withdraw from one, we should do a sort of accounting of all the fees, association dues and fees that we pay. I'm not opposed to that. I would want to chat. I would want to hear from our administrator about how much staff time something like that would take and whether that's really the best use. But the fact that within departments, there are professional association and or lobbying firms that are paid within departmental budgets, to me is a very separate issue from what is being asked of us to do here. And the fact that it did take board action, that it was a very public process, it was discussed in public forums, in news media, and then a vote was taken by commissioners at a standing regular meeting where people had opportunity to participate. And then the fact that Commissioner Bozovich has brought this up now, this is the third year in a row, unsuccessfully, tells me what I need to know.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just say this, there's one last word for my support for Commissioner Bozovich's recommendation. It's not about logging entirely. The discussion, that doesn't come up as part of the discussion. We talk about transparency and other things, but really the discussion probably is settling in many people's brains as to whether or not we're going to harvest timber on federal lands. To me, it goes far beyond that. To me, it goes back to a promise that was made to Lane County, a promise that caused us to have a very low tax base and consequently a significant reduction compared to other counties and compared to the rest of the state in general in our general fund available dollars. So to me, voting in favor of this is voting in favor of holding the federal government's feet to the fire regarding the promises that they made decades ago to subsidize Lane County's operating budget for the year. They've welched on that promise, and this is one way through this lobbying group to get the federal government to think about what they have done in terms of reducing our ability to provide, for instance, rural patrol. And for instance, strong support for our parks, which are falling apart. If you go to Orchard Point and others, so to me, that's a large part of this discussion is capturing the federal government's attention regarding a promise that they broke.
And if I could step in with my own comment here, for me, this is really it is about a revenue stream and providing for the needs of the county and the county's people. Somewhat following up with what Commissioner Farr said, the revenue was structured around having funds flow in from a resource, and that resource basically has been drastically diminished over the last number of years, and the residents of Lane County are suffering from that. If there is another pathway to advocate for this, more than what's being done right now with the exclusion of the ONC Association, I'm all in favor of that as well. But there's a mismatch where we've got all this federal land that we have to patrol as the county, that we have to manage for a bunch of different other ways with county funds, that is not bringing forward those revenues, and those lands aren't taxed. So there's a mismatch in the revenue stream. And so that's an important point for me, where just for the fact that it's broken and it's still broken. So Commissioner Burney, you had a comment?
Oh, I don't want to belabor this. I really believe that the timber industry will always be with us in Oregon, as well it should. I look forward to looking forward as opposed to looking to the past, because the environment has so substantially changed. I think it feels as if we're having this discussion as if Lane County's participation would impact the ability of the ONC to do what it does. I want to remind you that, and Jay, if I'm wrong, correct me. But while we have not been, Lane County has not been a member, the ONC was part of a lawsuit against the state of Oregon that now has the state of Oregon $1 billion in the hawk to figure out a way to reimburse companies for logs that weren't logged.
That's incorrect, Commissioner
Correct.
Brody. The
No,
ONC
correct.
Association did not participate in that lawsuit against the state in any way. Some of the counties participated, but not the association.
Thank you, Jay. I accept that. But the point is that I don't think joining or not fixes something that is, as you mentioned, Chair, is structurally incorrect. It is structurally incorrect. Again, I see this as a symbolic vote, and there you go. Thanks. I don't want to belabor it any more than that.
Discussion from other people, especially those who haven't had a chance yet. Mr. Weber.
Well, obviously being new on this, it's been quite an interesting conversation for the last 20 minutes. From what you said, Chair, as far as this is a revenue source, okay, sitting from the outside, well, that makes sense. We should look at a revenue source. It's also, I mean, from what Commissioner Trigger said and Commissioner Buck, as far as it's not open, it's not transparent. That is also troubling because that's what we should be. So I guess my question is there a way to, if we were part of this organization, I mean, they do have meetings, and since we would be a dues-paying member, we must be able to attend. Is there a way that whoever attends for this can disseminate that information and make it public, or I mean, is that even possible? That's kind of my question.
Commissioner Vosevich, you may have an answer to Mr. Weber's question.
Sure, I have an answer as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was going to say, Commissioner Bernie's actually been the representative that's been assigned to that organization for the board for the last, since he became a commissioner.
Okay. Mr. Weber, does that answer your question?
But are we able to then disseminate the information so that it is more transparent? I mean, is that possible?
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I feel a little bit unfair that there's a domination of one commissioner over other commissioners being able to have a say in this particular item. As you can see from this, it does become exceptionally contentious, and there's even more to this story than we're even discussing here today. We haven't been part of this association for a few years, so we don't have a representative on it. And we chose that on purpose on the board when we made that vote. And I made it for the reasons I stated earlier. This had been the same discussion 2 years ago, you would have had a flood of public comment prior to this particular item. So I'm sorry that you don't get to hear that because there is so much to this particular association that you may want to hear at some point. The problem is information was not being shared in a transparent way to the public, and the public wanted to be a part of it. I have seen no particular sign of any change in their operation, the way that they do business. That transparency is absolutely critical to taxpayers. It must happen. We thought, perhaps, at least I did, if we said, we'll be a part of this association, maybe we'll reconsider if you're able to be more public and transparent. There's been no change to that. If there was a change to that, and I was able to see that, maybe a reconsideration would be appropriate. But it is important that you get to be able to hear all sides of the conversation on this particular issue, and it just, we don't have that today.
Commissioner Buck, thank you very much. I do appreciate that, because like I said, I wasn't trying to rehash the stuff because you guys have already had some of that, which I obviously did not, and that's very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Mr. Pryor.
It's clear to me that this has moved beyond being a budget question. This is no longer a budget question. This is now a question of county commission policy. And since it's moved from a budget question into an issue of policy, and it's a policy question because the county commission has dealt with this issue. They've taken it up as a county commission. They voted on it as a county commission. So it's no longer appropriate for us to talk about it as a budget committee. Even though there is a proposal to move money as part of the budget, that is superseded by county policy. And so I don't want to be involved in hashing something that is not appropriate for a budget committee. This item, if it wants to come up again, and I heard Commissioner Bozovich say he will bring it back up again at the county commission level, that's the appropriate place to do it. But I don't think this is the right forum because of the conversation, the way it's gone.
I agree.
So we've now got all the information out on the table. Is there a motion for this? Commissioner Farr. Commissioner Farr, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I move to add dues for Association of Oregon and California Counties for fiscal year 21-22, with the expense to be drawn from the reserve fund of $76,350.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead, Commissioner Burney. Keep it short.
Okay, let me get this straight. Mr. Pryor made a statement I couldn't agree with more, differentiating between policy and budget. Commissioner Bozovich has said he doesn't care what happens here. He's bringing it up to the Board of Commissioners. So what are we voting?
Well, if I may say, what shows to me here is it actually puts an item on the, if this body moves this all the way forward, it puts the funding in place. If that's my interpretation of this, is it actually puts in the budget that there would be funding. Not speaking for the Board of Commissioners, but it sounds like membership is a separate topic. Any other discussion? Mr. Hazen.
Yeah, I'd like to concur with Mr. Pryor's remarks and just observe to the committee that this is a poster child for the discussion about budget process that I also look forward to in the fall.
Excellent. Other pieces of discussion? Let's move forward for a vote. I'm going to do this by roll call real quick. Mr. Hazen.
No.
Ms. Lasley.
No.
Mr. Pryor.
No.
Mr. Volodman, myself. I'm going to say yes. Mr. Weber.
No.
Commissioner Burney.
No.
Commissioner Bozovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Buck.
No.
Commissioner Farr.
Yes.
Commissioner Traeger.
No.
Motion fails. Moving forward, we're going to do a discussion on our next issue here. Pardon the dog barking in the background. Commissioner Farr, will you give us an introduction to this again, first discussion?
I can, Chair Bloodman. Thank you very much. And thank you to Ms. Moody for forwarding the actual letter of request I put together. This came at the request of the both River Road and Santa Clara community organizations, which, as I have described straddle the urban transition. The urban transition is the area that is inside the urban growth boundary, but outside of the city limits, which receives little to no city services, but really suffers from or bears with all of the associated pressures of being a part of the larger metropolitan area. That is to say, if you drive down a street, other than some of the streets don't have sidewalks, you couldn't tell the difference between the houses that are inside the city and the houses that are outside of the city. It's just a regular urban density in the River Road and Santa Clara areas. The urban transition exists elsewhere, but about 90% of it does exist in River Road and Santa Clara. So the consideration, what I'm asking the Budget Committee to consider is $22,781, which is the cost of augmenting the partial funding provided by the city for the annual newsletter series. As I mentioned before, the city subsidizes the cost per household for households inside of the city limits, but not to households outside the city limits. However, in order to provide the partial funding by the city, the communication has to go directly to the entire neighborhood area. So it really presents a funding obstacle that is almost insurmountable. They have raised funds in the past to help with some of the cards and some of the other announcements. Why it is more significant right now, the Board of County Commissioners received a report on a process that's ongoing, that's been in process now for about 3 years, and really has about 3 or more years probably to come to fruition, and that is the River Road Santa Clara area refinement plan, which is being worked on significantly by the city and the county, by staff from the city and the county, and an extremely large group of citizens in the area. For the refinement plan to get its information out to the entire community, the newsletters are necessary as a part of more than just the regular outreach by a community organization. So without going into too much detail, if you look at the document from the Tuesday board meeting, it gives a full accounting of what is happening with Group 1s, Group 2, and Group 3, and it requires a great deal of communication. So my request is for $22,781, which will be used for communication, direct communication. With that, I'm asking for $19,900 to come from reserves, from general fund reserve, and $22,881 would come from my personal office fund, for a total of $22,781. Thanks for listening. I'll answer any questions that you may have, and the document is attached to today's message sent out today by the Budget Department. Thank you.
Other discussion on this topic? Mr. Pryor?
I think Dawn had her hand up just before me. Why didn't she go first?
Okay, Ms. Lasley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to let the committee know that I actually serve on the executive board. I was elected to the executive board of the Santa Clara Community Organization. So I'm very familiar and supportive of this particular item. The refinement plan process that Commissioner Farr refers to has been a multi-year process that has had the advantage of thousands, literally thousands of hours of community neighborhood involvement to come up with a really robust set of principles and visioning. It's really been a community-wide visioning process about how the neighborhood wants to move forward, and that combination between River Road and Santa Clara has been a very robust partnership, and just exactly the kind of beautiful community grassroots work that we would love to see, creating a more long-term resilient and connected community, creating what they want for the future. So this small amount of funding can leverage hundreds and thousands of hours of community involvement in the service of planning and networking and resiliency efforts and donations and just all kinds of exciting community building that happens from this. And it has long been for both of our organizations, both the River Road organization and the Santa Clara organization have a great deal of trouble with outreach being expensive. And we want to reach the county community members as well as the city residents. And we don't have any funding. We only have city funding and no county funding to balance it.
Mr. Pryor?
I'm very supportive of this proposal. In my previous life at the city, I could see how a lot of the people in Santa Clara River Road are literally in the donut. They're part city, part county, and helped by neither, just simply because of where they are. And the city has committed a lot of money for communication and neighborhood support. And I think this is a real opportunity for those donut people to have access to a similar level of support. And at this time, they really need it because of that refinement plan process. This is a real model for how a community, which River Road and Santa Clara are, can really pull their future together. And this communication tool can help that enormously. So I really am grateful that Commissioner Farr brought this up, and I would support it 110%.
Does that mean I can reduce the amount from my personal office fund, Commissioner Pryor? The Council Pryor.
Commissioner Traeger?
Thank you, Chair. Well, that's perfect, Commissioner Farr, because what I was going to say about it is I'm supportive for any number of reasons as someone who's participated in neighborhood associations, I have 9 neighborhood associations within my commission district, and they all fall within the city of Eugene. None of them have this challenge that this particular group does. And so I know the value and the power of leveraging the volunteer hours and the work that gets done. And, you know, on our SOS forms, we look at that leverage line to help us understand the value of an investment. And I think if we were to put a dollar value on this investment in that way, in that leverage way, it would make it even clearer why this is a good use of really, in the scheme of this overall budget, a very small amount of money. And I appreciate that Commissioner Farr didn't bring to us the full amount, but demonstrated his good faith and personal investment and skin in the game by contributing some of his own commissioner fund to the proposal. So I thank him for that. I'm supportive. I am especially loving the timing that we just got the presentation as a board on the plan. So it just makes me all the more comfortable and enthusiastic supporting this for the donut people. Speaking as a coffee person, I'm happy to support the donut people.
Others? Commissioner Burney?
I just want to say I was going to suggest Commissioner Farr take less of his commissioner budget to put to this, but Commissioner Trieger was very slick in how she said that. I don't think I'm giving any room to do that now. So I just want to say I'm ready to second the motion when Commissioner Farr is ready to make it.
Commissioner Bozovich, you got your hand up?
Thank you. So I'm going to probably be the lone voice. I wanted this to come forward for discussion because I want to be able to express this. I have an equity issue over this. I represent multiple unincorporated areas of Lane County, from Heceta Beach outside of Florence to, Mapleton to other areas. The city of Eugene made a policy decision to require these community organizations to communicate with non-city residents, but not fund that communication. That is the crux of the problem. It's a city of Eugene policy problem. If we take county taxpayer money that the folks in Heceta Beach are paying and use it to subsidize Santa Clara River Road residents, it's not equitable. And I will not be voting for this. Thank you.
If I could ask if somebody knows the answer to this, it sounds like this process has been going on in the past. There's reference in here to other funding pieces. And maybe Commissioner Farr, is there a vision for what happens in the next, budget year and then, this process isn't going to be over in the next 12 months. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair Blodeman, and I've discussed this with members of the organization leadership group or the board, and really they need to and intend to find funding for their newsletter and their communication outreach. This is one time only, and I will only be bringing it forward one time. For the future, the timing is very critical on this, and because of the imminent nature of implementing phase 1 or group 1 of the process. So for the out years, there'll be different sources of funding to look for. In the past, there's been residual from you all may remember the sewer wars in Santa Clara. There was a fund that was established at that point in time that helped them with some of their outreach for a number of years. That fund has run bad pun here, but the funds run dry, and that's why this comes forward at this particularly critical point in time. I could go on with more arguments, not arguments, but points regarding public safety. Sheriff Harold is on this call right now, and he personally understands the difficulty of outreach of the community of where it's densely settled in an urban nature. It's just like the rest of the city. But I'll draw the line right there, Commissioner Chair Blodeman, and just say that this is my one time for me.
Other comments? Is there a motion? Ms. Lasley?
Actually, it was one last comment to clarify.
Okay.
There's an equity issue. There's an equity issue when thousands of residents in Santa Clara, I think the city's requirement is that if you're going to have a neighborhood association, you have to do outreach to everybody, whether they're city or county. And I think that's the city's attempt for equity, to make sure that county residents aren't left out of the conversation. We are a patchwork in Santa Clara. And I think this is hard for Commissioner Bozovich to realize because he hasn't spent time in this area. But we are a patchwork, and city and county residents are side by side by the thousands in Santa Clara and the River Road neighborhoods. And if the city didn't require outreach to everybody, if the city only said, well, we only have city dollars and they only go to city residents, then county residents would be entirely, within these neighborhoods, would be entirely left out of this planning process and the visioning process of their own community. So I think it's really important that there is outreach to county residents.
Commissioner Bozovich, I see your hand up for discussion.
I'll just remind the committee that I lived in River Road in both incorporated when I first rented there and moved here in 1993, and unincorporated from 1994 on through 2006. So I have spent lots of time in River Road, Santa Clara. In fact, I was a member of the River Road Santa Clara Urban Services Committee that was the initiating committee that started the planning process. One of our recommendations out of that committee was to have a master plan for these two neighborhoods. So I don't want to hear that I haven't spent time in these neighborhoods. I have spent time in these neighborhoods. I've also spent time in the unincorporated but inside the UGB areas of Florence. And I'm just telling you, if we take their taxpayer dollars and subsidize newsletters that the city of Eugene is requiring, there's going to be some very unhappy people from other areas of this county. And we could probably look at the UGBs for Cottage Grove, UGBs for other cities like North Springfield, and ask them if they want their taxes to go to subsidizing something the city of Eugene is requiring. I understand it's important for those neighborhood associations to communicate with everybody, but the problem is pulling those funds from areas that are in like situation, don't have that ability, and have no say in what the city of Eugene is requiring those community associations to do because they don't vote for a Eugene city councilor. So that's my problem with this. It is an equity issue. And, I'm fully aware of the patchwork there, having lived in it, having developed properties there as an engineer, and having represented it, and having supplied utilities to it as an eWeb engineer. So don't get me started on that.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Vladimir. I am ready to make a motion with one quick comment, and that a part of that Commissioner Bozovich points is that's a part of the reason that I wanted to put some of my own personal office fund into it, so that some of the money was coming from money that's already been allocated for commissioners to personally direct wherever they choose to direct it. So that doesn't cover it completely, Commissioner Bozovich, but it is certainly a part of the argument in favor of the fact that this is more of an equitable solution. So, Chair Vladimir, I'd like to move $22,781 to the River Road Community Organization and Santa Clara Community Organization for the funding to provide information to county households outside of city limits for a total of $22,781, with $19,900 coming from reserves, general fund reserves, and $2,881 from my personal office account. Now, those aren't my words; those are the words that we have before us. And that is my motion. But inherent in that is it's not just a newsletter outreach, it's other outreach as well as the newsletter outreach.
Very pleased to second.
Very good. It's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? Okay. We're going to do a roll call on this. Mr. Hazen.
Yes.
Ms. Lasley.
Yes.
Mr. Pryor.
Yes.
Mr. Volodin, that's me. I'll give it a yes. Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Mr. Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Bozovich.
No.
Commissioner Buck.
Yes.
Commissioner Farr.
Yes.
Commissioner Traeger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And Chair, I would say thank you, but I won't because you all didn't do it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we've got, I've got a question here by show of hands. We've got a couple of bits and pieces to go through here. Is there anybody who needs to have a break right now? We're close to the end. I think we can go ahead and push through. Seeing nobody for a break, we'll keep going. Ms. Moody, will you help us here, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Vladimir. So a couple of these were mentioned to you through the process, and then we do actually have a new one that came up today. So you have 3 additions, one of them more of a technical addition that need, 2 of them technical that need to occur before you approve the budget. The first one is in the Land Management Fund. You heard about this from Public Works during their presentation. They have increased FTE. The board has increased FTE in that program in the current year, but after the 21-22 budget was built. And so we need those positions to continue past July 1st. So we need to put them into the 21-22 budget. They are using a piece of reserves, as you can see. And I believe they spoke to you about that as well. I also believe Public Works will be on the line if you have any questions about it. The second one is the Extension Service Fund. The Extension Service 4-H levy was on the ballot and passed on Tuesday. So we need to put that in the budget. We don't assume the passage of levies until that occurs. So this is putting that and then the money that passes through the Lane County budget to the Extension Service as well. And then the third one that came up today is related to additional rent relief funds that are will be received from Health and Human Services in their Human Services Division, the Intergovernmental Services Fund. And this amount is large enough, as they told you during their presentation, these are pretty large amounts that are passing through the county, that we would not be able to have the board adopt the amount, have to wait for a supplemental because of the 10% rule. So we would like to have the budget committee put those in so that we don't hold anything up with the money passing through the county there. So the amounts of 20.4 million. And I'm sure that someone is also on the line there if you have any questions. So.
Questions from committee members regarding these items? Okay, I do not see any discussion on these. Ms. Moody, is there a, do we do a motion for each one of these, or what's the proper procedure for these?
Probably a motion for each one would be best since they're different funds, and that is how we budget. So if you could just increase the expenditures, changing the reserves as stated for each of them would be clearest for the record.
Excellent. Mr. Pryor.
Yeah, I'm happy to do the first one. I move for approval of an increase to the Land Management Fund for FTE, increased workload and fee waiver. Do you need the amount or just the title?
If you put the amount in there, that would be helpful in the motion.
Okay, in the revenue amount of $223,980 to an expense of $730,873.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. I'll entertain a motion for the second one.
Chair Flodman, I'd like to move funding the Extension Service Fund levy in the amount of 0.028 per 1,000 based on the results of the May 18, 2021 election. Revenue amount of $1,063,356 and an equal expense amount.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Had lots of seconds.
My second.
Any discussion on the topic? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay, please. Motion passes unanimously. Third. Commissioner Buck.
I'll move approval of the Intergovernmental Service Fund, Department of Treasury Emergency Rent Assistance in the revenue amount of $20,488,661 with equal expense.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second. Any additional discussion on this item? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay, please. Motion passes. Okay, Ms. Moody, do you have another slide?
We do. We will bring up the other slide that has the motions on it for you. So you do have, it's 4 or 5 motions here overall to go through the different pieces related to the tax rates of various levies, including the county's permanent rate. And then we do have a piece on one of the last motions that refers to the use of transient room tax for operations in Lane Event Center and parks. So I'm open for any questions on any of those, or the committee can proceed as desired.
Committee members? Commissioner Buck.
I'll start out here with motion number 1. Move approval of the fiscal year 21 to 2022 Lane County permanent tax rate of $1.2793 per 1,000 of assessed value.
Second.
Second. Very good. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay, please. Okay, motion passes. Other from the committee? Commissioner Buck.
I'll keep it moving here. Motion number 2, move approval of fiscal year 21-2022 local option tax for jail and critical youth services in the amount of $0.55 per thousand assessed value, with a $0.5 for jail services and $0.05 for youth services.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion on this topic? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Ms. Lasley.
I move approval of the fiscal year 2021-2022 local option tax to support 4-H and OSU extension programs in Lane County in the amount of $0.028 per $1,000 assessed value.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the topic? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay, please. Motion passes.
Okay, my turn for, I move approval to allow the use of transit room tax dollars for operational purposes consistent with Lane Code 4.175, and 6 and ORS 320.350 as follows. Lane Event Center, $1,005,556. Lane County Parks Division, $718,443.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the topic? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Next. Commissioner Buck.
I'll move approval of the entire fiscal year 21 to 2022 budget with all the adjustments approved by the Budget Committee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion regarding the entire budget? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Ms. Moody, do you have anything else for the committee?
We do not. Thank you, Chair Goodman.
Okay. Committee members, any other comments or discussion? Seeing none.
I have one.
Mr. Bernie, thank you.
Notice the chair told me to be quiet at one point, but now that we're 4 hours earlier than we were a year ago at this junction in the process, he's thanking me for killing time. Chair, I just wanted to note the efficiency and yet comprehensiveness with which this has been run. I do remember we lasted until 11 of the wee hours of the evening last time, and I wanted to thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads and a thumbs up. Okay, committee, I really appreciate all the time. And I must admit that we had a very high attendance for all of our meetings, all of our work sessions. I really appreciate everybody committing the time and effort to this process. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. You all have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.